Hey, and welcome to another episode of Motors and Meats. In today's episode, we're working on changing out the starter on the 997.2 Carrera S. Apologies in advance for not putting quite as much effort into the production on these. I just want to get down to the actual nitty-gritty, and there's just a few basic steps to get to the starter. It's really not that big a deal, but there's a couple things where, if you're from the South, you may have heard the term, you have to hold your mouth right. You've got to get your hands contorted just right to make it happen. Still, not that big a deal. So here's what we've done so far. First thing to do is remove the air box, and that's pretty simple. You take loose this guy right here. You take loose the mass airflow sensor. You may or may not have a bolt through here. I did not on my car. I don't know if that was removed by a previous owner or if it just wasn't included at all. And the other videos that I've seen, there was no mention of removing that bolt. On the 996, there is a single bolt that goes through there, and there's definitely a place for it right here. Once that's done, this whole thing will come up. Now, if you've got an S model like I do, you'll notice there's an extra little bracket on the side of your airbox here, and that's because on this side right here, you'll see there is an air changeover valve that needs to be removed. This clip right here goes into that bracket, and when you're removing that, there is one of these vacuum lines that needs to come off of the bottom right here, and I actually had to cut mine off. Fortunately, that's flexible line. You can see it over here underneath this thing. That's it right there where I cut it off. And it's flexible, and there's enough room on it to be able to reach back whenever I get ready to plug that back up. Next up is the throttle body, and you can see where it attaches there to the plenum. And it's just 4 bolts that hold it on, plus there's one clip that plugs in right here. And you just unclip that and then disconnect the fuel line from it, and then it will just come right out. After that's where we get a little bit trickier. We've got to disconnect this plenum right here from the intake manifolds. I think Porsche calls them something different, and don't freak out by the blocks of wood. I'll explain that in a minute. But to get that out, you have these clamps that go all the way around the rubber piece right here. This rubber boot wraps around the end of the plenum and around the sides of the intake manifold, and you can see from the dirt road I live on that has been really doing a good job of keeping the dust out, because the dust makes it to here and then that's it. I'm going to get all this cleaned up really good before I put it back in there, even though I know it's going to be nasty and dusty again after just a matter of weeks. So anyway, you remove those clamps, and there's just one bolt that goes through from the top right here down to the bottom. You take that loose, and then they're kind of stuck on. Just wiggle them, they'll pop loose. The one on the top comes right off, and it's hinged the way it connects. Let me show you. This is the way it looks whenever it's clamped over that rubber seal, and once you remove that bolt, it hinges up like that, and you can see that it's still captive in the back, and that is just a little hang-on clip right there. It just kind of hooks onto that. So when you get ready to put it back on, you slide this bottom one back underneath the plenum and around that rubber banding, and then the top one just goes back over and clips on there and then drops into place, and you bolt it back on. Once that's removed, you've got to get this rubber banding loose from here and scooch it back up onto the plenum. You're going to need a little bit larger size, less flexible, but still flexible plastic pry tool for that one. If you have a smaller plastic pry tool, it's going to bend more than the rubber, and it's not going to give you enough leverage to be able to get that scooched back up on there. But anyway, you just want to break the seal on this and then get it pulled back up onto the plenum. Once it's up onto the plenum all the way around, then you're able to get this plenum to move up or down. Now, in a lot of the instructions, it wants you to totally remove that plenum. This is an S model, and that means it has an additional vacuum seal on the back. I'm going to put a link below down in the description to Pelican Parts, to a video that they have, video instructions, because on the very back side of this, there is a vacuum controlled valve, and to get that loose, you've got to be able to separate that vacuum line, basically the hard line from the soft line, or like we did over here, you need to separate the soft line from the end of the changeover valve. Basically, it's the same kind of changeover valve on the back side of the plenum. So here's where I deviated from what Pelican Parts said to do. And because I do have an S and because I do have that vacuum line, if you don't have an S, you don't have a vacuum line. You can just pull the whole thing out and have full open exposure down to the starter, which is right back there. I do have an S, so I'm gonna leave that attached, and I've taken these blocks of wood, I know you've been wondering what in the world those are there for, just placed on top of the intake manifold, just resting up here. With the plenum resting on top of it. It's got plenty of wiggle room, and whenever I get done I can just slide those out. But there is plenty enough room right through here to be able to get that starter out. But that's the starter right there. That's the little plastic cap over the positive terminal. So that's going to come up, and you'll see underneath it there is a cable that we need to take loose right there. And then in the back of it, going in upside down for you just so I can get the camera in place. And if you look at the very back of the starter, I'll try to hold still on it right there. You can see one of the fasteners back there where it holds it onto the, I guess, the bell housing. And then on the exact opposite side of the starter, whoop, pull back out, there's another one that I definitely can't get the camera angle to, but it will be on that side of the starter down that way. And it's just going to take a combination of universal joints and extensions to be able to get it on there. But once you get it on there, it should break loose just fine. And then we have room to pull the starter straight forward, up and out, and over this way, and then out through here. My starter is supposed to arrive today, but I wanted to make sure that I had all of this stuff done so that as soon as the starter gets here, I can actually do the swap out. I haven't even disconnected the battery yet from my car, so I've got to go do that before I actually take that positive terminal off. Otherwise, I could get fried or cause damage to the starter, to the engine, who knows what. Always definitely make sure you take the battery loose before you do anything like that. We got the nut off of this one, and this piece right here, it looks like it just hits the starter at like a halfway point of the cord, so there's no really pulling the cord completely out of the way. It's just going to have to lift up to pull it out. But we also have to pull off that nut right there because that's attached to something else. There we go. Extensions and universal joints, that's the name of the game. All right, our next target is one of the bolts that actually holds the starter on. If we can get this to focus, there it is right there. That one, I don't know what size it is yet. It looks like it's one of those inverted Torx, but you can usually match up a regular socket to that. So I'm gonna see what I've got that works with it. And there's gonna be another one that I just can't get on camera that's off down on the other side over there. And I'm sure will be another fun combination of universal joints and extensions. We've got two extensions into one universal joint into one long 11mm going all the way back there to the back side of the starter. And that should do the trick. There's a lot of torque on this compared to the other ones. Nothing a little breaker bar can't take care of. There's something happened. Let's see if that got it or not. Yeah, I got it. Okay, good. I can see it turning now. All right, I think that I have it where you should be able to see this other bolt now. Let me see if I can get it to focus. There it is, right down back there. Come on, focus, focus. There you go, now you can see it. Right down there in the bottom left of your screen. So it's a lot easier looking to get to with your fingers than it is with the camera. But yeah, it shouldn't be any issue to get a socket on there with a universal joint, a couple of extensions, and have the same luck as we did on the other side. All right, I've got both bolts out. You can see the starter back there. It is loose now. I wanted to try to document how I actually get it out because there are a few barriers. The first thing is kind of tilt it up, I guess, once it's pulled out of the flywheel. There we go. Yeah, so far looking promising. Yeah, there we go. I did it. That's it. Successfully removed the starter without totally removing the plenum. I am happy about that. Starter's installed, everything's put back together. Let's see if I did it right. PSM failure, I've seen it show that before, right after taking the battery off. I haven't even made it out of my driveway yet. As soon as I started driving, the PSM failure light went away. So that's good. We'll give it a run down the road and see if anything else comes up as an issue. I believe I put everything back like I found it, so we should be good to go. Hey, thanks for watching another episode. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, if you want to see more content about the 997.2. Also, I've got lots of videos about my old 996, about my old Cayenne. So if it's Porsche content that you're into, and if you're into barbecue, there's always going to be a little bit of barbecue snuck in on the channel as well. I'd like you to hang around, and thanks for watching. See you next time.